Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight we are on episode 338, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about emergency communications. Now, Ben, this is your topic, and frankly, between the two of us, I would say the subject expert. Now, I know you're going to say something that's probably going to be like, oh, I'm not an expert, but the reality is, I would trust Ben's navigational skills far above my own any day. So between us, I don't care what you say, you're the expert in this field.
I guess there's a logic there, but this isn't so much about navigational skills. What do you do if something goes wrong, and how do you prep to have the best chance to get the hell out of there? And the basis of my thought with this topic tonight was I've been talking with people recently, and somebody mentioned I wouldn't bother with a Garmin InReach or a Spot or these other Zillow. I think was one. There's a whole bunch of these uh, satellite communication systems because he said my iPhone now has satellite communication. I'm like, I'm not sure that you want to be totally trusting that as your whole end result, right? Like, this is not necessarily what you want to trust your life on. First off, your phone is probably the first thing that's going to die when in an emergency. And do you want to be trusting that? And also, is that, I don't know, did I put my InReach close enough? No, I won't grab it. But you've used an InReach.
Yes.
You've seen them. It's a fair-sized device. It's not as big as a phone, but it's fully 100% dedicated. So
100%. And we may cover this later on, Ben, but a question that I kept meaning to ask you is, do you remember the original Spot devices?
Yes.
Was that the first one or the first readily available one? Because that's the one I was familiar with when I worked for Natural Resources. That's the way they went. That was my first introduction into them. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that before I forget. That way we can hopefully circle back to it later.
The one I remember, the first one I remember for Spot, looked like a little BlackBerry.
Yeah, well, that's what I remember. It's a little BlackBerry, a little keyboard on it. I'm like, okay, that thing was pretty cool.
So these devices, and there's a bunch out there. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of research. If you're going to buy one, make sure you do your research. But one of the things is I chose InReach for my system, and I'm not saying it's the absolute best, but it's good. It's very good. And the reason was I basically know I can go almost anywhere in the world and it's going to work.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the beauty about things that are satellite connected, I guess, is at some point, satellites, ideally, are going to cover the entirety of the globe, or as best as they can. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's dead spots. My satellite radio has dead spots. But the plan is, between all the satellites, and it's not just one satellite, because I have heard this in the past. People thought that GPS was linked off of, one satellite. There was one satellite floating around, and it handles global positioning system. That's not the case. There's multiple satellites from multiple... What's the word I'm looking for here, Ben? It's not different types. It's different networks. Is that
networks?
Okay,
would be a good word. Yeah.
So multiple satellites between multiple networks. Some of them interchange information between each other, and they kind of use a triangulation system to narrow down global positioning. And that's, in a nutshell, very simplistically how those work. So first question, because I know I had this just today when I said I was going to be talking about this, was how many satellites do global positioning systems have? And I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but I know it's significantly more than 20 at this point, isn't it, between all the networks? Like, I think one network alone, had 20 some in it, if I remember when I was looking. I just couldn't get a grasp on what the final number is anymore.
Time to me or her?
You. Sorry, I moved everything over. Okay, let's drag that window back because that's confusing.
So there's a few satellite systems up, and I did some research and I got the notes down here. Iridium, Thurane, Globestar, or Global Star. These are systems that hook up around the world. Now, the one that I chose was Iridium. It is a global system. It is fully global. Globestar Immersat is regional and limited at high latitudes. So I think it's anything above the 70th latitude, you have little, if any, coverage. So that does cover a hell of a lot. Like here in the northern hemisphere, that gets you pretty well all of Alaska, or except like maybe the northern coast of it. It gets most of northern Canada, except the more northern islands. It gets most of Europe, like if you go over like Sweden, Finland, that area, it catches all but the most northerly parts of those. So if you're not planning on doing, say, the Northwest Passage, that system will probably work okay for you. But when I did research, people who had that said that even in the areas at work, sometimes the delay was a little bit longer than some of the alternative ones. So again, when I looked at it, I looked for the one that seemed to have the best response. So that's something to keep in mind. And since then, there's another system that came out, Defy, through, I think, Motorola. And I'm not sure exactly. I'm trying to look to see if they say exactly where they grabbed from.
Well, you're looking that up. I just happened. I'm going to grab this off Wikipedia, and I'm going to have the caveat that this is from Wikipedia. Currently, there are 32 launched and operational GPS satellites in orbit. 7 are in reserve or testing. 39 are retired. 2 were lost during launch. 1 non-operational prototype satellite that was never launched. Wikipedia entry. So there you go.
So, but even with your GPS, and GPS satellites generally are not two-way communication. They send out one signal, and your computer in your device does the calculations to figure out where you're to. Even with those, there are multiple systems out there. So Glasnost is the Russian one. China has one up there now. There's a bunch of countries that have them up there. And most modern GPS systems actually look at all the systems and combine the information from these multiple systems to form their signal. So you're not generally, like if you grab a Garmin today and look up, it'll tell you which networks it's using. If you open your phone, go into settings, it'll tell you which ones you're using for navigation. The more systems you use, the more likely you are to be accurate, because these systems sort of reinforce what the other ones are saying. So if one system goes completely out of whack, the other ones are still going to say the same thing. You're going to well, that's the odd man out. I'm not listening to him anymore. He's off his rocker. So,
but it is true. I mean, it's the same as in first response. Let's use ice rescue for an example. If we know that somebody went through the ice, we can get as many points or satellites or people along the shore as we can to look at that point. And if everybody's pointing towards a specific point, and the more people you get looking at that point, the more accurately you can narrow that down. Same principle as satellites. They're just coming from orbit.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Like these systems that I'm talking about right now, and let's just sort of cover them a little bit. So this is satellite messengers. That's what they're listed on here. You got your Garmin InReach, your Zoleo, Zoleo, Vivi, Spot, Motorola Defy, Vivi Stick, and etc. There's multiple ones of these things, and they can use one or multiple of these systems. But Iridium, Globalstar, and Amistrat are 2 of the big popular ones for this stuff, right? And the beauty of these is you oftentimes have a one-touch button. So one button for SOS. So if everything goes poorly, you can hit one button and it's going to send a signal and somebody should come to you. Also, on top of that, by paying for my InReach, for example, and I think the other ones have something similar, I cover myself for an insurance. And I watched a video this morning on this, and this guy said if he hadn't had the InReach insurance, he would have been out like $35,000 when they rescued him. But this helped because, some of it was covered by his health plan or whatever, and everything else was covered by his InReach plan. So that was awesome. Like that meant the difference. If you're just going with your cell phone, apparently, if your iPhone or your Samsung, I think it's S24 or above, has one, and certain one of the newer Pixels have them, look up. Results will vary whether they have full internet or full satellite communication or not. It could be determined even if your provider has activated it for your particular phone. So even if the device is capable of it, you may not have it on. It may not be working, and it's hard for you to know if it works. I test my InReach regularly. I have never tested, nor do I think I have it on my phone. If I had it, I would consider it a great backup. I don't know if I would ever get rid of my other system.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate on things that you're trusting your life to have something that was built and designed to do that purpose. I'm happy having a backup that has a program on it that should do that job the way it was designed to do, but relies on other factors. Now it's not just relying on the app, it's relying on the software of the phone and a whole bunch of other stuff as where that inReach or the spot or whatever, it's its own programming, run its own stuff with its own technicians working on its own network. It's just more likely, in my mind at least, to function properly. Less errors.
Now, there are a few other things you can do. So these are two options you have. Satellite phones is another option. These are really good. They work on similar networks, if not the exact. I know Iridium for sure. I've made phone calls on Iridium system. Uh, the beauty of those is you can not only like send a quick message and receive a quick message, you can actually have a full phone call. You can convey a lot more information in a verbal phone call than you would otherwise. Some of the newer systems allow you to send short amounts of media. I think the newer InReach has that
Yep.
ability. Mine does not, but a sat phone would give you that. Satellite is not your only option though. And this I have a lot less information on, but I do know they exist. Anyone who's ever flown on your plane, there's an ELT. You know what that is?
Mm, I know what it
In
does. I have no idea what it stands for.
emergency locator transmitter. So the way this works is there's a specific frequency that it transmits on. I think that may have changed recently, and some of them I think can even be picked up by satellites based on this. Yeah, it's 406 megahertz distress signal. So there is a personal locator beacon, and so this is a small
Mm,
beacon that you can push, and it sends a signal. And every airplane, most military equipment, there's a whole bunch of things that are monitoring this, and a lot of other centers that'll monitor it. And if this goes off, you will activate some kind of search and rescue. Like somebody is coming for you if you have one
it's
of
not
these
a
things.
messaging service, is what you mean. Like, you're not sending out a message, it's just a distress button. If you
It's
push
a
it, somebody is coming.
it's a tone, and so this, the closest I came to seeing one of these in action, I missed by probably a year or two. But somebody in the college I went to, we had one of these ELTs, and when they put it on the shelf, they dropped it, and nobody thought anything about it. There's an internal battery, and the thing started screaming. And of course, I was in Gander. It's a major airport in Newfoundland, and somebody from like the local Nav Canada or the military, I'm not sure who, they showed up about 15 minutes later with a little like directional beacon, and they walked right up to the shelf and they shut it off, and then they had a conversation with everyone in that building because they had accidentally set off an emergency locator beacon at an airport, which made everyone think that there was probably a plane crash in that airport at that time. There was not. So these things work on the same frequency. I think ships have a similar thing.
Hmm.
So any passing by ships could pick up and they will let somebody know. Like if they hear it and can't get to it, they will forward it on to search and rescue or the appropriate authorities, and somebody will try to get to it. So it is an option, but there's no message, voice. It actually trigger a full SAR response, and the devices are fairly expensive. But there's no charge, no monthly fee. There's no subscription. Like literally, if you set the signal off, somebody will, if they hear it, they will come. Now, that is the caveat. If you're in the middle of absolutely nowhere and nobody flies over, it only has the range that device can travel to. So if you're in a cave and you set this off, nobody's liable to hear it.
Hmm.
This is not unlike your satellite devices either. If you're in too much cover, it won't pick up a satellite. You will not send it out. So you do want to try and get, out in a clearing, probably with, clear view of the sky, super remote areas, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or something. You may not get somebody picking up this in a reasonable time frame. So that's the other thing. The other one I had thought of is radios. And this includes quite a few.
So I did have a
CD.
question on radios for you, actually, Ben.
Yes.
Because you'd probably be more familiar with these radios than I would be. When I was working for Natural Resources, we had a set of two-way communication radios with Garmin GPS built in. Every time they keyed up, it basically would show the point where that person was keying up from. Now, because I wasn't using it directly, it was being shown to me. I'm not sure if that was in between their own communication network. I assume that has to use some sort of satellite transmitting, but I don't know if it shows like their location to only the radios that it's connected with, or if that pings out and it can be seen somewhere else. Have you been familiar with those? Because I would think for like 2 people, 3 people, a group going into the woods, though they're a somewhat expensive item, what a way to keep in communication. If somebody got lost, all you really got to do is key up and you would have help there.
The only ones I'm super familiar with like that were ones put out by companies like Garmin, Magellan. I think a couple of the other potential. I don't know if Florence still sells one. But they used to sell a radio with a GPS built in, and Search and Rescue had these. So when we were searching, every time you keyed, it sent a signal on top of your voice message that gave your coordinates. Now, we never trusted, in Search and Rescue, they never trusted these things, but they did use them for tracking our fields and stuff. But they would often call us and say, give us your location, and we would read it off of an actual GPS. And then they would agree whether, yeah, it matches what we're seeing, or no, you seem to have veered off somehow because I got 2 different locations. So a lot of them are hooked on that, but you can get that on these same ones. So CB, FSR, GMSR, VHF, UHF, and HF. So I think these are mostly your FSR, GMSRS type radios.
Yeah, that's a lot of VHF, UHF goes on around here. Like ham would be on the lower frequencies of that, but VHF, UHF, very common for volunteer fire services or emergency ground search and rescue and stuff like that. Usually they'll work in conjunction with repeaters, so not quite like a trunk mobile system or something like that where it can bounce between repeaters. It basically has to hit the tower that's closest to it to go to the other radio. It can't go from tower to tower to tower. So I guess good short range wise, perhaps.
That's what we used to Search and Rescue. Same idea. We had a couple of repeaters, whatever stations we'd set up. We try to find a good hill. We go out. We stick the antenna up.
Yeah,
and it definitely gave us range. We could use our radios without them. They would talk radio to radio, but our range was very limited. If we wanted to extend it, and we had 2, so we used to set them up in areas so we could extend our range. A great system, yes, it is very limited. In fact, most of these, to my best of my knowledge, until you get into maybe the UHF and HF, especially the HF, are more or less limited to line of sight.
Yeah, more or less.
Now, everyone's going to tell you, oh, no, I used one and it went way further than I could see. And absolutely, that does happen, especially in certain atmospheric conditions. It sometimes will bounce off of like clouds is the best way for me to describe it on here. But basically, if there's different densities in the ionosphere type deal, it goes up. I'm definitely on the wrong words here. And it can bounce off that signal. And so that different, atmospheric conditions can cause these things to go longer than they're intended.
I know it's super common with like CBs and ham radio. I know like people here on the coast can listen to communications from Europe on the right conditions.
Yeah. Exactly. The thing with HF is better at doing that. It does tend to bounce off the atmosphere better and can travel. Here's the funny thing is sometimes you can use an HF and the guy only a few kilometers away from you can't hear you at all, but the guy in Europe can. So when you're on an HF system, depending on everything, it's not as exact as you'd like it to be, but you can definitely send out a message and they'll relay it. Like that's the beauty of that system is somebody else on the system can actually relay your message or help you out with that. So, yeah.
And I guess that's what all of these would do. At least you're in communication. You can give reference points if something else. I guess the only downside to this would be, and maybe you would know more, maybe it's different in other locations, but in Nova Scotia, not a lot of people monitor the UHF, VHF bands except for specific stations. As for like CBs or something, a lot more people just openly monitoring them. Not just truckers. Everywhere usually has a local channel. It happens to be 27 around here. Most of Canada, 19 is a big channel. 1 is the big truck channel here. But these are big channels that are openly monitored. You know what I mean? Joe Blow down the street has a CB antenna, and guarantee you he's probably sitting there cycling between 3 or 4 different channels. 19, I think, generally is the emergency channel.
Uh, I, I'm, I am not radio licensed. Although I
I
looked
would
at it
have
the
to
other
go
day.
look at my radio out in the garage. I don't remember. I've never
But
hooked it up.
I've looked at them. I looked at like the Bowfangs. You can buy them relatively cheap, honestly. And if you're driving around here, like you drive around BC, you'll often see on the wall or on the side of the roads are a number, and it's rural radio, I think is what it stands for. But you can tune into that channel, and that's what people on that road are on. And if somebody's entering a road or leaving a road, they often send messages. And a lot of the back road guys here, they have these radios. Now, I've used them, and honestly, they're a little finicky. We were in a chain of guys. We had probably 20, 30 vehicles with a few hundred feet between us. I oftentimes could not hear one end of the line or the other. So basically, the cars closest to me, I could hear quite clearly. The ones a little further away, I didn't hear. So I had no idea what was going on. Like I was catching half communications and stuff. That being said, it is easy to find out what stations are used locally. You can tune into, you can listen and see what's going on. There's also certain stations that are for emergencies, and you can tune into those. It's worth knowing this. And then if you are in trouble, you can try transmitting on that. The thing is, no guarantee anyone's going to hear you. But if you're in a spot where there's logging and there's RCMP or other type of systems, if there's any bush pilots, you can probably find a channel that's generally monitored and transmit in an emergency situation for that.
I'm not sure how I drug us down the road of radio, so I'm just sitting here thinking, how did this tie
Oh,
into emergency
but it is.
communication system? Well, I mean, it's still communications.
A lot of these small handheld radios are very versatile. They have a decent function when you're on the road. You can, if you're traveling, especially in vehicle stuff, you can hear who's in the area, what's on the go. You can get a lot of information from these. And once rescue teams get close to you, if you know their station, you can pretty well tune them in. So if search and rescue is called and you're in the woods, you can generally talk to them. I mean, we would have, it might take a bit to find them. You got what, 40 plus channels? So you're going to be fiddling in that. And more better radios may even have even more channels. So it's worth knowing this stuff. And the other fun thing is if you're into any kind of events, most likely an event has a channel. You can listen on their security, figure out what's going on. They're not super private. That is the one downside or upside, depending on who you are. So it is one of the things I had listed to talk about. So those are sort of the things that I can think of. We're mostly talking about wireless methods. The other method, of course, is to leave a message on the ground in case somebody flying over can see it. That's not a guarantee, though. Probably the least practical and long-term solution.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sorry, I'm going to be honest. I was reading the comments here. I still had one ear on you, though. And yeah, I agree, though. I mean, it's all emergency communications. It's basically how to keep in contact with people.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, you can take emergency blanket and put 3 lines out with it, like 3 reflective lines. I think it's a rule of 3, like 3 of anything will usually alert somebody. You can, try to knock down some trees and skin them so it makes some really clear thing going on. You can try to put 3 fires out and that'll alert people, 3 pillars of smoke. But that's going to take a lot of physical effort. If you're lost and injured, you probably won't have the energy or power to do that. But any of these electronic signals will work for you. So it is worth looking at into these things. The only thing I would like to say is if there's a satellite device in your phone that can send out help, that is great. I wouldn't consider it my only option. I would probably try to go with at least one other backup. I really don't care which system you go to. I've really have actually been interested in like the Fi, like the Motorola one. But Spot, I know a few people at Spot who really love it. Um, the Bivy stick also has some good reputation. Any of these are good options. They all have like a monthly subscription for the most part, and that's the biggest downfall to it. People are like, oh, I don't know if I want to pay more for something. You know, the thing is, you can also just pay for the months you use.
Hmm. I was gonna say, don't they go on a month to month? It's not like a yearly plan anyway.
Now, month to month, I pay like 10, 14 bucks a month. And it's, it means a lot to some people. Honestly, I've paid for a lot of months I never used it, but the the reason I don't mind, and it does bother me a tiny bit, is if I want to leave tomorrow, I don't want to have to think, okay, I have to set this up again. No, it's good to go. I can grab it anytime I want. And it's oftentimes left in my vehicles. So if I'm using a vehicle a lot, I might leave it attached or with that vehicle. So if anything happens, I can have it available. It also helps with these things to have them turned on when you start your adventure and test them before you leave. That's the other thing I'd like to say. Garmin recommends it. I'm sure the other ones do too. Before you leave, do a quick test. Make sure it is working. Hook it up to any accessory devices. This is the other thing. I have a small network created with mine. So my phone talks to my inReach. My watch talks to my inReach. If something happens and the inReach is on and I'm separated completely from it, I can still reach down to my wrist and turn on my watch and send an emergency signal. Or I can go to my phone and send a message using my phone, where it's way easier to type on this than it is my inReach. So my inReach is just a communication device. And although I can do it on the device, it's actually awkward. But
I could see
the
that
beauty
because
is,
they don't have a really good keyboard on it. It's kind of back
no,
with the
you
old
got two
T9 days.
buttons, right? It's up and down and select type deal. It's very minimal, right? So the beauty of the other device is a little easier. Even my watch, I think, has more buttons on it than my inReach. So because of that, you really want to make sure you're using it to your best ability. The beauty is there's preset messages. So, I'm starting my trip, or just checking in, all is good, or I'm headed home, and then the rest of them in mine are pretty well, please come get me, I'm dying.
Help.
uh, but if you don't want, like, you can even make a deal. And this is what I've kind of done with my friends and family. Said, if I send this message, this is what I mean. So if I want a third message, I'm like, you don't need to know when I'm coming back. So if I'm coming back, maybe you should come check on me, right? But just make sure if you're going to do something like that, everyone understands this is your plan.
Yeah.
And but I used to check in all the time. Every night before you go to bed, send a check in. Just let your loved ones know you're there, you're safe. I think that means as good as the sending out help. I need help, because honestly, if you're completely out of communication for days on end, people start to wonder, are you okay? It's a little better if you're there with a group, because they're like, okay, somebody is probably fine. They'll let us know if something happens. But if you're by yourself, family and friends can be quite nervous, right? Like,
Oh, for
haven't
sure.
heard from them in a couple of days. What's going on? So it helps.
All right, Ben. So we are coming up on 28 minutes here. Actually, we're over
Yeah.
28 minutes. So let's get down to so-called brass tacks. Recommendations. What one's better for each? We talked about several different methods there. Which method would you kind of categorize to a person? So, I mean, I'm just looking at kind of your notes there, and I'm thinking like the last thing we talked about was CBs and stuff. So CBs and stuff, great for a group of people that are traveling together, maybe like overlanders, backroaders, probably with a vehicle, because they are fairly low frequency, high power consumption kind of devices.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where CB radios fall in. Perfect for, like I said, if you're going rock crawling, if you're going backwoods exploring, if in your vehicles, if you're going to do overlanding and there's a bunchy and you want to kind of stay in somewhat communication, but kind of want to have your own private areas.
Yeah, I think any powered vehicle, that is a decent option for you, because you can keep it charged up. You can run it off the vehicle's electrical system if you want. They have batteries they'll run for a few hours away from it, and it allows you to stay in communication with the other people in the network. You know what I mean? Plus, it's a great way to avoid like logging trucks and stuff, which in the backwoods can be a big deal. The satellite messenger systems, I think those are some of the smallest and lightest options you have. So really good for hikers, backwoods campers, even canoes and kayaks. That's where I think those come in really handy. They can also be used on motorcyclists or anyone who just wants something that's small, lightweight, and you can send a quick message to let everyone know you're fine. Plus, the fact is, once it hits the satellite, I can talk to anyone in the world. So I could have a friend uh, in Australia, and I could say, "Listen, man, I'm going camping. Just I'll send you a message today. If you don't hear from somebody, reach out to somebody in this area. That's where I'll be, and tell them that you think I might be in trouble." It really doesn't matter where your contact person is; they can get it. So that's the beauty of that over these other radios. I can contact anyone in the world and get them to organize my help. Right. Also, by hitting the SOS button, Garmin or any of these other ones will sends them to a calling center. They will coordinate with the local authorities to get you help. We interviewed a guy who had to do that.
Jonathan starts with P, but I can't remember now.
Yeah. Anyways, it he was fine. He got it fine. The response was probably not optimal. It was more on the local authorities than them. This personal locating beacon is the third thing another thing we kind of mentioned. Uh, I think they're relatively expensive, and I don't know. Like the smallest one I seen was on a watch, but I think they said with that one the range was somewhat limited. I think you had to open up one side and pull a wire out as the antenna, if I remember correctly. They've been around for a long time. This was around in the '90s when I was still in college, so you can get them. I don't know how long they would last, and they're kind of like a one-time thing. Like you hit the button, it's just going to keep sending the signal until help comes, and then
Yeah, they have to be officially reset somehow. It's not like you can reset them yourself usually.
I mean, there's more to it. It's a great device though for anyone who's it's a last ditch thing. Like if you're going to be potentially unconscious or late, this is something you can sit. It'll send a message until the battery dies essentially, and they can use the Traglate it in. The place I think of is boats and planes have a similar system. So stuff like that, it is an option. Just realize that it's probably not. It's limited. It's going to go to certain people. Certain people are monitoring this channel and reacting to it, not the general public. So.
And I guess the last one we chatted about was sat phones. And satellite phones are great if you have the money, because they're probably the most expensive out of all of them. They're probably the most bulky out of all of them too, but they do give you full voice communication.
And I see these being used mostly by people with, say, camps way back in the woods, and they're going back and spending 4 or 5 days back, or maybe a few weeks. And you want to stay in contact with family. You want to still be able to do more stuff. This is a great option. So if you're flying back and staying more or less stationary, and you have some kind of backup power system, maybe solar panels with a small power bank, this is something you can keep them charged up. Or if you're traveling, I think if I remember correctly, Stephen when he did his trip, he took a sat phone.
He did, but he used it sparingly. I remember reading in the book he only called a couple of times through the whole trip.
Yeah, because the calls are frightfully expensive, and the battery only lasts so long. So you have to really plan that out. But honestly, it's a great way to contact your pilot and tell them where to come. It's there's a bit more of a thing there where you can have that actual communication. Now I can do that with like the inReach and the Spot for sure. I mean, they're messenger systems. You can send coordinates. You can negotiate back and forth a little bit. But there's something to be said about a sat phone for that, right? So yeah, if you have the money and the resources to carry it around, obviously it's a great option. Can be used in any of the functions. But yeah, choose the one that works for you. Do your research. That's the big thing. Don't say, well, Ben does this or Robert does this.
You're never going to say Rob does that. I can guarantee you that. Nobody in their right mind is ever going to say those words.
Yeah. But do some research, look into these things, find out, is it going to do the areas you want? I want it global because I didn't know. I have hopes of doing certain trips, and will I hit the 70th parallel? Maybe not. But if I had the opportunity, would I turn it down? Probably not.
Eventually, I'd like to get myself an inReach, same as I am in the process of setting up a CV tower in my backyard. Funny enough, my father still does like truck driving, so does my, I guess, stepfather, my mother's new husband. Yeah, stepfather, I think that's what it is. Anyway, he drives a truck. I know most of the truckers in the area, and it's like if you get it up far enough, you can actually get a couple kilometers out of it. And I think it's
Yeah.
going to be great fun for Willie. Like, I just want to hand her the mic and let her bug them for an hour or two. But at the same time,
What's that trucker song? The teddy bear?
I'm not sure.
This kid calls on to CB radio, something about his father, I think, passed away and left him the truck with the CB radio. And he goes on the radio and he's talking to all the truckers. And eventually they come and they all do a loop around the town. Every trucker takes them for a ride around town. He's
Oh,
mentioning
sweet.
this.
No, I've
It's,
never heard of that one, but
oh,
I'll have to check into that. But
you
anyway,
should
great.
hang with,
Sorry.
you should hang with a trucker once in a while. You'd have known about that song.
I've literally never heard of it, and I hang around truckers all the time. I drove a truck for a while, Ben.
Oh man, I'll find it for you.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. Still a great method of communication for local and stuff like that. So I'm definitely going to play with it. I definitely want to get an inReach. I've been kind of piggybacking on Ben's experience with this stuff only because, I mean, he has one. He's been using it. I've been picking his brain with it. It seems to be the one I want to go for. But yeah, kind of know breaker 10-4, old buddy. Yeah, it's kind of know what you need. I think for me, like most times, the little messaging devices are going to be good for the majority. If you're getting into some like real cavernous areas and stuff like that, you may want one of those PLBs. Sat phones, that's out of my price range, always will be. So
Even when it's not, it will be.
yeah, kind of deal. Like if I ever have the money to buy one, somebody would slap me if I bought it. And it may not be Melissa, but somebody's going to walk by and slap me for it.
I truly think cell phones will disappear and be replaced with sat phones.
Eventually, I think you're right. I mean, as we've been saying here, the technology is definitely in like a lot of the iPhones and stuff now, satellite communication. So it's only a matter of time, especially with things like, Starlink. Is that right? Starlink? Yeah.
There's been rumors for years that Tesla or Starlink is going to come up with their own cell phone that will run off the Starlink system. But I've heard, and this is the tinfoil hat thing. It costs so much to build our present cell phone system that they don't want us. That nobody is really rushing to move to another system until there's plenty of money to be made on this system yet.
And I mean, money generally dictates how things move forward.
Yeah. So even if the technology exists, plus just cluttering the sky with more satellites might not be the best choice. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on there. A little bit of was it the conspiracy theories going on?
Okay. But I was like, I don't know where you're going with this, Ben. I'm waiting just like everybody else.
Yeah. But no. Yeah. I recommend if you're doing backwoods camping, hiking, canoeing, that get a GPS or a messenger. Any of the systems, we're not, until one of those companies reaches out and sponsors us and make sure that we both have free ones with unlimited usage.
I just take a free device and pay for my usage. I'm really not that picky.
We could be bought, but it's going to cost, like we're not cheap.
I can't be bribed, but I do accept gifts.
Anyways, it's something to think about. Just be aware. The ones on the phone, I'm not personally confident are a great be all and end all, and I can't guarantee it will get you out of there. And even a quick Google or ChatGPT search stated, do not trust this as your only solution. So.
But I think that's a good place to wrap her up here for tonight. I think Ben will agree with me here. We don't pretend to be subject matter experts. We're just sharing our knowledge, our opinions, and what we know about them. As Ben said, we highly encourage everybody to do their own research, get out there and figure out what works best for them. Hopefully, we've at least given you something to think about if you had some questions on all these systems or didn't know what systems were available to you. I know it is one of those high-ticket items. There is cost involved in this, but it's, they're life safety devices at the same time. And almost anything that's going to be a life safety device is going to come with a price tag because they're ensuring it works. That's where a lot of that cost goes. You know what I mean? You're paying for ensuring that when you need it, it functions.
Most of the guys I know who bought them, or girls, state that they bought them because their significant other, their lover, their friends, their families, their loved ones, kind of insisted that if they didn't have a way to contact them at any given time, that they couldn't be doing these trips by themselves or with complete strangers or whatever you're doing. So they signed up for this stuff to give themselves that freedom and that safety. You rarely buy it for yourself. You're buying it because your loved ones wanted that sense of security. So yeah, it's not just for you, it's for everyone around you, right?
Absolutely. So just so everybody knows, we did have Danny and Steve joining us here tonight. That's the Drifting Spore and Red Sand Adventures. Always a huge shout out to them. If you want to see their chats, there's you can check it out in the comments there. I won't get into it on our show tonight. But thanks, guys, for joining us. And to everybody else out there that's listening to us in podcast world, thanks for listening to us here again tonight. And if you have ideas for shows or questions you want to ask, as always, reach out to us. You can get in contact with us at AtlanticBushcraft.ca, or you can look for our Facebook page, or I guess it's not Twitter anymore, it's X, Instagram, whatever. We're out there. Figure it out, whatever works good for you, both for contacting us and for emergency messaging. Let us know your stories, anything like that. We love to hear from you folks. But anyway, until next week, have fun, folks. Be safe.
Get there. Have fun.